I love that. Every week I'm sitting down and just brainstorming for a few hours. That's my hobby, but I'm in the lucky position that people actually pay me for it. I'm a researcher by trade. I studied physics, and researching is what I learned. And now I can do it in a different way, business ideas. So though my skills don't get rusty, I'm now pulling up the notes and I try to put some structure in it and distill the process. So very rough steps, and we don't have to talk about everything in there, obviously. But there's definitely some gold, some very cool ideas, and it's a lot of the stuff is what you talk about in your blog post. Do you agree with the big picture overview I put in there?
Yeah, you find a market that's interesting. There's people there already. Look at it, find problems in it. Yeah, profit, especially the last profit. Cross your fingers.
Find the market, evaluate the market, find problems within the market, brainstorm solutions, evaluate solutions, profit. You could say this is obvious, but there are different ways of doing it, right? This is just one approach, but it's a very solid approach. And for example, scratching your own itch is a completely different story. But actually, a lot of the most popular strategies for finding product ideas, startup ideas, SaaS ideas actually fit into this structure, I would say. And let's start at not at the end, but it would be cool. Start at the beginning, finding markets. And you have some cool ideas, and I also added a few. So one idea you put in there is follow the traffic, build backwards from that.
Yeah, most startups that I've worked at before, their main channels were both sales, obviously, and then organic traffic. But it was like the sales, kind of what they learned from that funneled into building things around organic traffic. And so seeing that behind the scenes gave me the idea that like there's probably a lot more into this than just like what you see on the search results. There was a lot of thought, a lot of time, a lot of process, a lot of people behind that. And so why not look at that, have like basic SEO skills, and then that will be the starting point for finding ideas, because they must have invested something into this. Let me dig a little bit deeper into that.
Interesting. So how would you do that? What is step one?
Follow the traffic. So what I like to do is from the courses that I put out, so talking about like just a list of markets and then just putting them into search results, just browsing to see where else they show up, and then starting to find out all the other competitors that are also within the space too, and then finding out what kind of traffic they are pulling. So using sort of third-party sources, or even using Google Ads, keyword planner, just to get a rough idea of the number of people searching for the the keywords that these particular websites are ranking for. And then I find the sort of low-hanging fruits amongst that. And then if there is something within there, and then I do some sort of search on Google as well for those low-hanging fruit keywords are ranking for. And if there's an opportunity for me to go in there by, competing in terms of better content, or making maybe a free feature or something like that, then to me, that to me is like the building backwards. That's where I can start. And it's just like, okay, cool. As a solo person, I don't have the full resources to deploy capital to hire and all that stuff. So I'm going to start at this one very specific point, and then land, hedge, and then grow from there.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, exactly. You skipped you skipped ahead. Yeah, but step one is you have different lists that you like to use, right? And one is opensecrets.org/industries. I saw that you linked to it. And yeah, this is just a huge list of different industries like marine transport, motion picture production, payday lenders, right? All these different industries. And there's a different one. I also saw you using ebisworld.com/list of industries, right? This is like the first step, and you pick whatever sparks your interest. And then you put the term into Google, right? And it's just trying to get a feel for what's going on at this point. And I also saw you recommending like trying different questions, what and how, and these kind of things. And there is this amazing tool called Answer the Public. Yeah, I think they are doing something similar. It's just the same thing, but automated. So they pull in the results, you enter a search term, and they append and prepend all these question modifiers, and then you get like an overview immediately. Okay, this is step one. And then you look at the companies or at the research results, what they are doing.
Yeah, so I look at the result. Yeah, I look at the companies who are in the space. What is it that they're doing? How big are the teams? Do they have a lot of features that I can compete with and then build for? And then, yeah, it's a lot of browsing and looking and getting a feel for and seeing what's out there.
And then how do you actually find like problems, like niche problems? Let's stick to like micro SaaS opportunities, because I know that a lot of people are struggling with that. Anyone can look at the list and then find an industry, but how do you actually get into it? How do you actually find problems worth solving? And one strategy you mentioned is looking at job descriptions, right?
That's right. Yeah, that one's the biggest one, because they are literally giving you a list of problems to solve, right? Like people hire people, or like companies hire people to solve problems. And so like within the job descriptions, it would tell you the requirements of the job and what you need to actually do. And then it's from within there that you could start to see the specific problems that either industry agnostic or maybe even industry specific, the problems that are appearing within these sort of job descriptions. And I just look at that, right? And then if there's like certain keywords within there that look interesting, that are like specific to describing a problem, then I put that into Google too. And then I just add in management software. That's my favorite sort of keyword to tack onto those. And it's just, there's so many. And then that's how you narrow down what a solution, or like maybe even a micro SaaS solution might be, just from doing that process over and over again. Like it's not going to give you the exact problem like right from the get-go, but it's just a sort of way to sort of look at it as you search.
Yeah, for example, you always have these responsibilities or whatever listed, and it really stays spelling out what is the job. And this is how you can find out, okay, your task will be license management, whatever. And okay, yeah, what software are they using for that? And this is how you dig deeper.
Pardon? Sorry, I missed that.
No, I was just saying that makes sense. You're looking at the responsibilities and then you dig deeper. Right. Depending on if there's a list of tasks or what this kind of a person in this role would have to do. And yeah, then you dig deeper. But I think another option, you also mentioned this, is looking at the features, right? Mm-hmm. So because we're talking about micro SaaS, so unbundling one of the features could be an opportunity, because this is what happens in any industry, that solutions get bloated over time. And the cool thing is you can just look at the pricing pages and they have these different tiers usually. Yeah. And you can then see, okay, what is this? And maybe this I can turn this into a standalone solution. There's a way of approaching this.
That's right. Yeah, that's how I go. Yeah, you look at the pricing page and you see what's there.
So yeah, but let's take a step back, because I think there are lots of cool ways how you can actually find markets and niches, because you mentioned like these static lists, and this is of course a solid place to start, but there are also alternatives obviously. And for example, what I think makes a lot of sense is looking at new industries, obviously emerging industries, because in there you can probably find low-hanging fruit much easier than in an industry that has been around for decades. It's going to be a lot more competitive, and it will be much harder to find tiny niches you can fill. Whereas if there is a hot new industry that's exploding right now, it's probably smart to do the same process, but here.
And like not all problems will be solved just because it is a new industry and everybody's sort of just excited about getting their foot into it, that like they might overlook the typical problems that might come up, and then you can tailor a micro solution to that, if anything.
Yeah, and I think another advantage really is that it's much easier to get into conversations with decision makers, whereas in these very established industries, it can be tough if you're just a random dude without any credentials. But we all know this from crypto. You can reach out to almost anyone, and people are happy to talk and freely share the problems they are struggling with. And I guess this is true in almost any new industry, because it's all new, exciting. People are happy to share, and everyone is. Whereas it's not as much a zero-sum game, at least a perceived zero-sum game as in these old industries. And yeah, I think there are different ways how you can find these new emerging industries. And you have a very cool YouTube video that I would just watch today where you look at AngelList jobs. And this is obviously a very smart place to look for it, because you have all these startups, but only successful startups, or at least so successful that they have enough money to hire people. So it's not just ideas, but actually money. And yeah, they have descriptions, right? They tell you what they are doing, and you can find tons of new markets and industries if you just spend a few minutes and in a startup job board. Like,
yeah, you just, this is like a side, but like you just reminded me of that video. I remember I just woke up and I was like, I'm going to record a video. But yeah, totally. Looking at AngelList, like that's probably like the best place to look for new emerging things, because like VCs are throwing money at sort of new things, trying to catch the wave. Yeah, looking there and just searching there and seeing the kind of problems. It's a very simple. That's where the idea for looking on Indeed came from too, because it's the same idea. It's just looking at job descriptions and responsibilities, and that's, yeah, I think it's a treasure trove as well.
agreed. Yeah. And it's funny because when you wrote down in the doc, follow the traffic, I thought of something completely different. And this is what I wrote down, because there are these top traffic lists. Alexa had a big one, but they are closing down now. But there are different ones. Majestic Million is another one. And yeah, there are a few. And I think, or I just tested it like today. If you just go into this list with a million websites or whatever, and go just scroll into different places, like who's at position 10,000, who's at position 50,000 or whatever. And yeah, you find surprising websites that get a lot of traffic. And right. This, I think, is another way how you can find under the radar opportunities, niches, new markets. And then one step beyond that, because this is something I just discovered for myself. It's maybe a bit trivial, but I think it's magic, is then once you have a website like this, looking at the keywords they are ranking for, right? And I did this for a starter story recently, and I found out that 50% of their traffic is coming from name keywords, like people looking for how to name a boutique, a fashion brand names. Absolutely crazy. I never would have guessed, but it's huge. It's huge. There are so many keywords with solid traffic. And yeah, Pat is now making, I don't know, 50K a month from his site. So it's clearly working.
Wow, yeah. You can kind of uncover what you didn't think top sites were ranking for. And then that can give you some sort of inspiration. Hey, maybe there's an opportunity out there for me for getting my stuff ranked as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and exactly, because, for example, for Pat, his site is not laser focused, right? His site is more on telling these entrepreneurial stories. And I guess you then just stumbled upon this. And I bet if you now go all in, you can get a piece of the cake pretty much, and you can build better solutions quickly. And this is one way to think about it. So what is your favorite tool to do this kind of research? For example, looking at website, what they are ranking for, because I know there are many and some are very expensive, but I'm always curious what other people are.
Yeah, the most popular one, and I think you probably heard this around a lot, is Ahrefs. They have an incredible database of keywords and ranking and all that good stuff. It's funny you mentioned that, because like I'm actually trying to build something similar to that. And it's like going up against these incumbents, but hopefully one day I can say, what's your favorite tool? It's like my tool. Ahrefs is, I think, the best one out there for doing this kind of research. Although it is a little hefty in price, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit expensive. I think 79 or something is now the lowest here.
Mm-hmm.
There is a cheaper alternative called Keywords Everywhere. And yes, it's a bit hidden, but they also have this feature where you can go on a website and then click on a button and you get like the keywords they're ranking for. It's not as accurate as Ahrefs, but much, much cheaper. And you only pay as you go, which is also cool. Like you buy credits and then you only pay what you really use. And it's also a good alternative, I would say.
I think I agree with that. There's a Chrome extension and everything.
Other opportunity ideas do we have for finding markets? And other stuff I wrote down is follow the money, right? Looking at who's spending money on ads. And this is obviously related to what you're describing, because when you're just Googling for an industry, you're not finding the organic results, but also the ads. And this is oftentimes more interesting because, you know, these are the companies that making real money if they can afford to spend here. And for example, it's the same on Amazon, right? If you want to do some research on Amazon and you type in some keyword and then you look at the ads, because, you know, these products are doing really well, because if it's just a random book, you actually don't know if this guy makes any money. But if he can afford to have his ad at the very top, okay, there is something going on. So let's look into it.
Yeah, totally. And another way to look at it too is like ads it's tied to somebody's KPI, right? Like they have to make a sale, and that's the reason why they're doing this. And so somebody out there is expecting a return from something like this. Either they're doing research and you can kind of follow them along a little bit longer to see if they survive, or it's something like you said, it's like already working, it's working really well. Is there something in there that I can emulate on a smaller?
It's a complete tangent, but I really want to know how much money Monday.com is spending on ads. Every day I'm seeing 100 of their ads on YouTube. It's so crazy. They must be burning through millions.
I think I saw somewhere either on LinkedIn or I forget, it was like a community. Somebody was analyzing them and like working backwards from what the potential ad spend looks like versus a bootstrapped solution to it. And I think if they were looking at it from our margin perspective, Monday wasn't doing as well. I think I just remember it, generally speaking, it's the bootstrap one's like doing pretty well. But yeah, Monday is like the prime example. I was like, you see it everywhere.
Yeah, there must be so much money in CRM. It's really crazy. And another, I think, interesting metric is also related. It's like the number of jobs. And we already talked about this. But yeah, if there are lots of job posts in a particular industry, this is telling, okay, there's a lot of money. And I have a very niche example of this because we are doing this Twitter ghostwriting productized service. And I did some research on Upwork, obviously. So because, yeah, I logged in as a freelancer just to see what people are looking for. And it turned out that really 50% of companies looking for ghostwriters are crypto companies. Absolutely insane.
Interesting. Wow. That's a really good one too. So yeah, I might steal that idea of posing as a person, as a freelancer, to see what is actually out there.
And the magic is you can actually get into these conversations with decision makers. So another related example is that they, as I mentioned, do these data products, and you can look at what kind of scraping jobs are people posting, right? And then you get into conversation with these people and they tell you what they're actually looking for. And then you can productize it if it makes sense.
Amazing.
And you can do this with any upper category, writing, scraping, just two examples I looked into recently because it's my kind of thing. But
oh, that's brilliant. And something I put in there, Rapid API, it was a buddy of mine brought it to my attention that like some people are raking in the money in this thing. An API, Rapid API, they have like the marketplace already ready there for you. It's just up to you to build the API. They'll take their cut, but like you can consider that as a marketing cut. But then the question is, what data set do you want to put an API on top of and then sell? What you're saying is like you do the scraping stuff and you can hear exactly what it is that people want and what they're looking for, and then boom, that becomes like a product idea for you. That's brilliant. Wow.
The final idea I had for finding markets is follow the funding, which I think makes also a lot of sense because, as we already talked about, VCs spend a lot of time evaluating industries, looking at the data. It's their job. And yeah, you can just piggyback. If you follow the funding news, you can also where the energy, where the money is going, and then dive in deeper. What other problems are there? Get into these conversations, reach out to the founders. Hey, cool what you're doing, let's hop on a call. And you'd be surprised how often they say yes. So especially if it's they are startup founders, right? They are young guys like us. And I think that's another method.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. I remember I was looking at, there was a site that was, how do I say it? It was like a database of all the YC companies that are both alive or that were there previously or like that shut down. And it was just a database and you could just like press right and it would just give you the next random one. And that is a way of following the funding. Yeah. You like put them into like very, very digestible ways of saying how to look for ideas, like follow the funding, follow the money, follow the ads. It's great.
Yeah, like I said, this is from my background. It's almost, it's compulsive behavior for me. I need to organize and put stuff into boxes, rearrange these boxes until it makes sense, at least for me. And this is why I like to think in terms of frameworks and big picture overview, whatever. But it's also fun. Okay, like next step is obviously evaluating market, right? How do you actually figure out if it makes sense to look deeper into this market? And of course, we already touched upon this, right? Like we said, when the money is flowing into theirs, or whatever, that's a good signal. But one cool example I was reminded of is what Rob Walling has in his book, Start Small. And he has a very specific recommendation, which is you should look at the prices in magazines in this niche. And if you can buy a full page ad in a magazine target at your market for less than $5,000, it's a great market for micropreneurs and bootstrappers. I think that's an interesting, very actionable tactic.
Yeah, because the magazine itself knows who they're targeting.
Exactly. And at the same time, it's the same trick again that, ad spend tells you a lot about revenue, size of market, these kind of profit margins.
Right.
So I think that's one smart strategy. And the second criterion he has, is there an inexpensive way to reach the market? And this is also, underappreciated, I think, but we should all do it more. Like it's so easy nowadays to just hack together an MVP, whatever, without thinking first and really having a go-to-market strategy. There are all these memes about founders. Yeah, the whole go-to-market strategy is posting the link on Product Hunt and praying. And afterward, the trough of sorrow comes, and most die because they have no other plans. So looking at developing like a go-to-market strategy and seeing if you can actually afford it. And this ties into the same thing. Would it actually cost to book an ad here? Nowadays, probably we could replace magazines with newsletters. So you look at what are the rates for newsletter ads. It's not so easy, or it's a bit of work to get this data, because it's not like public. There's not like a catalog, and even the few catalogs which are there are not complete. But you just have to reach out to people. Hey, I'm interested in buying an ad in your newsletter. What's the current price, right? And then they tell you, and then you can figure out, okay, this is how I could grow, or not. This is too expensive.
Right. Yeah. That's one of your products, right? Like Newsletter Spy. I think that was.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I don't have like data on sponsor prices, because it's a very fragmented market, right? It's not like in an app store or wherever where everyone puts in their info, but everyone has their own website, and there is no structure, and you can't scrape it in a reliable way. But honestly, I think this is great in a sense, because it means the market is very inefficient. And this means you can find incredible opportunities with newsletter ads. Whereas, for example, Facebook ads and Google ads are so efficient, you can't find like hidden gems there. It's so like the valuable keywords have a very high cost per click. And this is simply not true with newsletters. And you can really find underpriced ad slots.
Yeah. I was just writing down something that you just said, like hidden gems lie in inefficiencies, right? That's follow the inefficiencies.
Yeah. So what is the next step? Because I think that sufficient, right? And obviously this is not science. This is art. Ultimately, you need to trust your gut and just go with it and see how the market responds. But at least having a plan is a smart idea. But ultimately, you just have to look at these kind of data points. What does a newsletter ad cost, or magazine if you're old school? And then you have to just move forward. But now let's say we identified 5 or so cool industries. And what do we do next? How do we actually dive in deeper? How do we find cool problems to solve? And one example we already talked about is like job descriptions, which obviously is a very cool method. And do you have any other favorite methods? And I think I just remember you put in another one, right? 1-star ratings.
Yeah, that comes from building on top of the Shopify App Store. That one's cool because you can see what people are complaining about. And then if I'm to follow your framework of follow the star, I would box that into following the conversation, especially on places where it's already hosted on somewhere big. So for example, like the Shopify App Store, right? There's the stars there. And then what I also, going back to the Rob Walling thing of like finding an inexpensive way to reach them. One thing that interested me about the Shopify App Store is that they have the App Store and the prices are all there. And then two is they also have a help. And so if you were to dig deep into the help forums and find out what people are complaining about, look for threads that have been going on for years for maybe a feature or a product that hasn't been implemented, there might be an opportunity there for you. So it's like measure twice, and then you'll know that there's a high probability of working. Like you said, it's not science, it's an art. But you try to gather as much data as you can based off of what people are complaining about, and then just launching it to them. And so with the Shopify App Store, if there's a forum and people are talking about it, boom, that's your inexpensive way to reach them. You just comment in the thread, and then suddenly everybody on the thread gets notified of it. And then it has also the added benefit of SEO, right? Because that particular question is getting ranked on forums or helpsupport.shopify.com, which has an incredibly high domain authority. And you're going to be getting people not only from Google, but not only from the Shopify App Store, but from Google itself too. Yeah, I think my preferred way is like gathering as much data as possible, and then like increasing that confidence in, if I launch it in a place where there will be eyeballs, will it stick? And I feel like if you do it enough times, it just becomes like you can start to spot things that have a high probability of sticking.
Yeah, you have to develop like the taste, the product taste. And I actually just read a bunch of amazing blog posts by Cedric Chin. Common Cog is this website. And he analyzed these different frameworks for validating or evaluating product ideas. And yeah, a lot of it, like his conclusion is that a lot of it boils down to taste.
That's great.
This is something you have to learn through experience. And the famous examples working backwards from Amazon, where they actually start new product projects by writing the press release and the FAQ, and then they iterate from there. And there are always like experienced people in there who critique it and this is good enough, this is not good enough, right? Until like this press release and FAQ is convincing enough. And the other are Brain Trust, it's called, from Pixar, where you're pitching the idea to this Brain Trust. And the third one is the Apple process, and I actually forgot the name. I gotta look it up. Have you heard of that one?
From Apple?
Yeah, how Apple validates product ideas. Because Amazon has working back, Pixar has brain trust, and Apple has creative selection. You iterate on demos and present these demos to a hierarchy of product leaders. And then, you need to prove yourself in these meetings that you have good taste. Otherwise, you will not be invited again. And it's interesting that all these big companies obviously have a lot of experience shipping products, ended up in the same place, which is these forming groups of people who have good taste. And this is what it boils down for them.
It's interesting.
And obviously there is like the other, which is lean startups, where you just ship it, put it out there and see what happens. And then you iterate by talking to customers. But this is oftentimes not possible. And also there is a taste component here, where because even if it's quick, you don't have enough time to launch all your ideas. This is an amazing blog post. It's titled "Product Validation Frameworks Are Mostly Useless Without Taste" on commoncog.com. So this is amazing. And another thing that came to mind is because you mentioned like the Shopify App Store, which is obviously amazing, but there are also, let's not forget, Capterra, right? Which is also a gold mine for this very same reasons. You can look at like popular products with 1-star ratings and just read what people are complaining about. And it's not that easy, but you need to spend a few hours. But if you do it, you can actually find cool stuff, I think, by doing that.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot of gem hunting. You just have to be willing to dig through a lot of information.
Yeah, and I just remember that a friend, David, I recorded an episode with a few weeks ago, told me about this because he's running a successful startup in the edutech industry. And obviously there are also ads on Capterra, right? Or like the ranking depends on how much you actually pay. And you can actually get this data, right? Because if you're a startup, you have to know what you have to pay to get to this position. And what is super interesting is that this is super detailed because it depends on the country. So you not just can look at, okay, this industry cost per click currently, but also what is it like in this particular country? And I think that's fascinating because, yeah, you can obviously then build like the same software and export it to a different market to make it specifically for Germany or for Argentina or whatever. And that could also be possible if I'm actually not sure how easy it is to get this data, but it sounded that obviously if you have an account on Capterra and you're buying ads, you have to get this. So I think it's possible. And this is what he told me. It's possible to export it and sort through it because you then need to develop like a bidding strategy. But we can also flip this around and just use it for market research.
Yeah, it's very similar to that Upwork idea of just going in there and posing as one, and then seeing what it is that they give you. And
this is like the one angle or the two angles we talked about: 1-star reviews and ad spend, ad pricing. And the other method you mentioned is searching for problems in. You mentioned the Shopify, and it's funny. I have a list of key phrases because I tested this a while ago, and there are these key phrases. If you Google for them, and then you can just on Google you can just specify like site, and then help whatever Shopify or the Rolex forum or whatever your niche is. And then you just put in there, I hate, this sucks, the worst thing about, is there some way to, how can I automate? And depending on the niche, some of them work better than others. But it's a funny example, but I think I actually found some good stuff on the Rolex forum.
Did you remember what you did find? Because that one's like completely...
It were very niche problems, so I can't remember. Like one obvious problem is that and I just learned this then, is that it's actually hard to buy Rolex. You can't just go into the store. And it's the same with Ferraris, for example, right? You can't just buy the best, no matter how much money you have, because the way it works that you need to start like with the cheaper models and then buy a few of them and then slowly move up the hierarchy. And I only know that this is true for Rolex and Ferrari, but I bet it's true for lots of luxury brands. It's not true, for example, for Lambos, right? This is why a lot of new money people buying Lambos. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. It reminds me of the Apple like taste.
Yeah, exactly. That you're worthy of driving this or wearing this, and if any kid can buy it, it's no longer as valuable. So, and they have enough demand, or this is how they drive up demand, and they just increase the prices to make it work. So I think that's a smart strategy.
That's fascinating.
So another cool method you mentioned in the doc we have here is Excel. What they are using Excel for method.
This one just comes from talking to, let's say, people that you work with, and then just seeing what's the Excel sheets that they're using are all about and what they're for and what they're trying to manage. I feel like that's a gold mine of an idea that you could build. But I also recently discovered this way of, similar to how you did those search terms for forums for particular brands, you could do the same thing, but for Google Docs. And then you could just do like, maybe the keyword is like management or something like that. Yeah, or like planning or whatever. Some people leave the settings off for like privacy, and then Google just indexes it, and then there's opportunities there. You can see what these templates are. Sometimes people make templates and they make templates for free. There might be opportunities there as well for finding something that you can build based off of these Excel templates that are just all out there. It's just a matter of browsing and looking, and then again, the taste. I love that. That's amazing. And then just evaluating there, going through the framework, seeing what could work, what couldn't work, who you can get it out to.
Yeah, I love that, because I was just about to say, so I love the strategy and it obviously works. There are many examples of companies that did it successfully, but it's actually hard to get this kind of information. unless you're an insider. Obviously, if you're working in the industry, you see all the Google Docs and you can see, okay, this is where they still use an Excel or whatever. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense that you can just at least find some of these opportunities by Googling for public. And yeah, and then again, it probably never hurts to just reach out to the author and ask, hey, is this still what you're using? And what other stuff you have? I just found this. And this could work. Just talking to people always works. And yeah, just two. I recently listened to an episode of Mixergy.
I don't.
Like Startup Stories or something like this, the podcast. Yeah, it's one of these old, but it's still going on, still going strong. And he had a guest who I'm looking it up right now. But if you just Google for Mixergy and spreadsheet, the title is Another Startup That Replaced a Spreadsheet. Jason Hirschman, the founder of Uncountable, which helps R&D scientists with comprehensive data management system. The whole team can work. And yeah, it's a fascinating example, and the episode is really great. He just describes how he found the problem, and now it's a big deal. R&D scientists are using it instead of Google Sheets, which obviously is a big win, because if you have more than 3 people in a Google Sheet, it's not very, it gets, right? Yeah. So, and actually Steph Smith had a list of companies that started as spreadsheets. Nomad List is a good example. You need a budget, Zero Cater, Skyscanner, Flexible, and Levels.fyi. Actually, yeah, and they are all now in the middle. These are big examples.
That's wild. Yeah,
really is. And okay, now we have the industry. We have ideas. Actually, yeah, we have problems, and hopefully also some ideas for how to solve them. I guess this is probably worth diving into another time, because there are these different product categories that we talked about, and a SaaS is just one option. And I think it's also Rob Walling who has this model of the bootstrap stair or whatever, where he describes like the typical progression, where people usually start by building a plugin or a few plugins and only later go over to a real standalone SaaS or something like that. And probably now the playbook has changed again, and people start even with simpler stuff like just a no-code, whatever, Gumroad, Airtable, Zapier kind of thing, or just an info product, right? This is also the easiest way how you can solve these problems is just write a tutorial. The easiest MVP is always just an article. And my favorite example of this is he did it a few times. He's the master, and he actually coined the term. And he wrote about, obviously, Rome. He wrote about how he's using Rome research. And then the blog post went viral, and he built a course. And yeah, actually was able to buy a house from the profits, which is wild. But the other example that he did, like these Kegel exercises for men, wrote a blog post that went viral on some sex forum for men or whatever. How to last longer in bed for men. Yeah, it also went viral, and he then hired someone on Upwork or whatever, a freelancer, to build the app, and it's making a few thousand each month. So this is also cool. So I guess we can dive into this another time, like these different product categories, because we are all over time almost, but this was great. I almost feel like we shouldn't release this. So we should let it out a bit more and then sell it as a course.
That's brilliant. But I feel like you shouldn't even release it. No, this is totally great. This is a lot of ideas, went back and forth, analyzing what other people are thinking about there, like in the community about this. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And I guess we can do this again anytime. I really enjoyed it. And where can people find more? What's your website and where's your course? It's actually tomzaragoza.com.
Yeah, that's probably the best place to see everything I'm working on. Twitter's a random mix of just things launching and random conversations. So yeah, if there's anything that people are interested in seeing, tomzaragoza.com is probably the best place.
Awesome.
Start from there. Yeah.
Thank you so much.